BOUTTE to the Commanders is heating up right now. ESPN and Ian Rappaport both got Ashburn buzzing about pulling the Patriots receiver, exactly what Jaden Daniels needs next to McLaurin. But hold up, because I gotta tell you why this deal could cost way more than Washington wants to pay, and what Boutte just admitted himself that changes the whole picture. Meanwhile, Bobby Wagner is still sitting there with no team, 59 tackles away from breaking Ray Lewis's all-time record, and what's coming out of Ashburn about a possible return is gonna surprise you, but there's a real reason Dan Quinn hasn't picked up the phone yet. And to close it out, the market is completely snubbing DEEBO Samuel, not a single call according to Mike Florio, and the reason nobody wants to pay him what he thinks he's worth is gonna sting. Stick around, DMV, because these three burgundy and gold stories connect in a way you don't see coming. Raise hail. Let's start with the story I'm most interested in breaking down today, because it hits the #1 problem with this offense directly. Who is lining up across from Terry McLaurin in 2026? And this story got hot just 4 days ago. On July 14th, Boutte unfollowed the Patriots on Instagram and posted a story with nothing but an eyeball emoji. No caption, no explanation. You already know what that kind of move means in the modern NFL. It's a player saying, without saying anything, something's cooking. And in this case, what's cooking touches us directly. Let's get the full context. Boutte, according to reporting from Adam Schefter, later confirmed by Ian Rappaport and repeated by basically every insider in the league, has been asking his way out of Foxborough ever since New England traded for AJ Brown and then signed Romeo Doubs in free agency. Do the math with me. Brown, Doubs, and Boutte all fighting for the same slot and outside X snaps, with rookie Kyle Williams breathing down his neck too. There's no room. Boutte already made that clear at minicamp with a short line that says it all. It's about me, nobody else. He didn't need to say much more than that. ESPN's Dan Graziano confirmed the Patriots keep getting calls on him, and Graziano himself is the one who put Washington directly on the map as a landing spot. Now, why does this matter to me as a Commanders fan? Because Boutte's resume isn't filler. The guy came out of LSU, where as a true freshman at just 18 years old, he put up 45 catches for 735 yards and 5 touchdowns, the kind of start that gets scouts writing future first rounder in their notes. He broke the SEC single game receiving record that same season against Ole Miss, 14 catches for 308 yards. Then came an ankle injury that cut short a sophomore year where he was leading the nation in receiving touchdowns, and a rough stretch off the field. Back in January of 2024, he was investigated over illegal underage gambling, roughly 8,900 wagers according to the allegations. All those charges were dropped that July. Boutte talked about it himself, with an honesty I respect in an essay he wrote for the Players Tribune this year, admitting he developed a real gambling addiction during his time at LSU. I'm bringing this up not to judge him, but because it explains exactly why a first-round talent ended up falling to the 6th round of the 2023 draft. Last season with the Patriots, he finished with 33 catches, 551 yards, and 6 touchdowns, playing in a New England offense that, let's be honest, wasn't handing anybody anything. That's 16.7 yards per catch, and here's a stat that blew my mind when I found it. Every single one of his regular season catches went for either a first down or a touchdown, not one filler reception. That's a vertical receiver profile, the kind that stretches a defense and opens up room for the rest of the attack to breathe. And here's where it gets interesting for us on cost. Bleacher Report's Mo Moton proposes the Commanders could get Boutte for something as cheap as a 5th-round pick in 2027. But here's the thing, not every report agrees on the price. Sports Illustrated's Albert Breer wrote that New England is actually hoping to get a 3rd-round pick back. That gap between a 5th and a 3rd isn't small. It's the difference between a steal and a fair but no longer cheap bet. I'll be honest, I don't know which number is right yet, and anybody who tells you they're certain is lying to you. What we do know for sure is Boutte's contract. He's in the final year of a 4-year rookie deal worth $4.02 million total. That's the real number behind the rumor. Basically, any pick Washington hands over comes out cheap compared to what it would cost to sign a receiver with his profile on the open market. What gives this story an extra emotional layer is the LSU connection. Boutte and Jaden Daniels were teammates in Baton Rouge during the 2022 season. I'm not saying that guarantees instant chemistry in the NFL. This league is full of examples of college reunions that didn't translate to the pro level, but I can tell you, as somebody who's watched 1,000 of these stories play out, that a quarterback's comfort level with a receiver who already knows his reads, his timing, how he works the shoulder on comeback routes, speeds up the learning curve in ways raw stats don't fully capture. Now the part where I have to be the honest analyst and not just the hype man. The original headline that came to me from the Times of India mentioned Atlanta as the other top destination for BOUTTE, and while I couldn't independently confirm that specific connection in the most recent July reporting, the original article is blocked for me, I'm not going to dismiss it. Because the Falcons carry the exact same problem we do, they need a reliable number 2 receiver. If this turns into a bidding war between Washington and Atlanta, the Commanders' edge isn't the money. Boutte's contract is cheap for any team. It's the pure football argument. A reunion with Daniels, an offense that's already proven it can reach a conference championship, and a real role from day one because, let's be honest, the depth chart behind McLaurin right now is Antonio Williams, a third-round rookie, Van Jefferson, a low-profile free agent, Treylon Burks, Diami Brown, Jalen Lane, and Luke McCaffrey all fighting for roles. None of those names keep a rival defensive coordinator up at night. Boutte could. I also want to be honest about the risk. Boutte hasn't proven he can be a high-volume receiver in an offense that leans on him as its number 1 or number 2 option. His best pro season came inside a broken New England scheme, where he was probably benefiting from defenses keying on other names. And yes, there's that off-field history I just mentioned. Look, I could be wrong, but I think that risk weighed against the real cost of the contract, and the chance to get him for a 5th or even a 3rd round pick is exactly the kind of bet Adam Peters has been willing to make since he got to Washington. Look at the pattern. Peters avoided making big trades all offseason on purpose, saving his draft pick arsenal for what's shaping up to be a loaded 2027 class. So if he breaks that discipline right now to go get BOUTTE, that tells me the front office sees something real there. My personal take, so it's on the record. If Washington can close this for a 5th round pick, do it right now. Don't overthink it. If the real price ends up being a 3rd rounder, the conversation shifts a bit, but for me it's still worth it given Boutte's profile and the reunion with Daniels. The downside is minimal, the upside is a 24-year-old vertical receiver reunited with his college quarterback playing in a real contending offense. This doesn't solve every problem at the position, but it gives Blah one more piece to play matchups with, and in a division where Philadelphia and Dallas keep investing heavily in their secondaries, we need every cheap variety of threat we can get. Look, talking about new additions is the fun part of the business. Now comes the part that makes my chest feel weird, because it touches someone who's already part of this franchise's history, even after just 2 seasons with us. Okay, this is the one giving me mixed feelings this week, and I want to break it down with the respect it deserves, because we're talking about a first ballot Hall of Famer. Bobby Wagner, as of today, does not have a team for the 2026 season, period. That's how simple and how strange it feels to even say out loud. The linebacker who came to Washington in 2024 following Dan Quinn from Seattle, who became the heart and the voice of that defense during the run to the NFC Championship game. That same Wagner finished last season with 162 tackles, the 4th best single season total of his entire career. At age 35, let that sink in, and became just the 3rd player in NFL history to reach 2,000 career tackles, joining an incredibly exclusive club with London Fletcher at 2,039 and Ray Lewis at 2,059. He needs 59 more tackles to pass Lewis and become the all-time leader, 59. That's literally less than what he racks up in 4 of his normal games. And here's the part nobody's discussing with the weight it deserves. That record might not get broken in a Washington jersey. Adam Peters made it crystal clear at the end of the season that the priority for this defense was to get younger and faster. And in practice, that meant drafting Sonny Styles in the 1st round and signing Leo Chenal in free agency to take over the middle linebacker role. Wagner, according to Pro Football Focus, and pretty much every insider who's touched the topic, became a real liability in coverage last year. Opposing offenses were specifically targeting him on second-level routes, knowing that at 35, even a player with his instincts and his eyes can't run with athletic tight ends and backs releasing out of the backfield on swing routes. That's physics. Not disrespect to his legacy, but here's what makes me think twice before accepting the narrative that this is already over. Wagner still made the NFL's top 100 list for 2026, voted on by the league's own players, coming in at number 81 without a team. That doesn't happen to a player who has nothing left to give. And there are reports out of WUSA 9 and Locked On Commanders indicating Dan Quinn hasn't fully closed the door, that there's a possible mentor-type role on the table, something similar to what KJ Wright did in Seattle during the final seasons of his career, where Wagner would take limited snaps in specific packages while passing down system knowledge to Sonny Styles in real time, on the field, in the film room, and in every detail of disguise and leverage that only somebody with 14 years of veteran experience can teach. I'm going to be honest about what I think happens here, and this is just my personal opinion. I could be wrong. I think Wagner ends up signing somewhere before the regular season starts, but not necessarily with Washington. PFF had already projected him to Buffalo back in January, with the logic that the Bills have real holes at linebacker with Matt Milano's and Shaq Thompson's contracts expiring. If I'm Wagner and I want to close out my career chasing a ring with a defense built to win now, that conversation makes sense. But if Washington offers him the mentor role with guaranteed snaps and the chance to chase the all-time record surrounded by the people who watched him reach 2,000, it wouldn't shock me at all if he chooses to stay out of pure loyalty, the same way he chose to stay in 2025 when he said that line that stuck with me. I feel like we've got unfinished business to do. That man doesn't talk about unfinished business just to talk. That man means every word. What I do want to make clear, with the technical criticism this deserves, if Washington decides not to bring him back, that's not a betrayal, it's a roster decision based on the age curve and a real need for speed and coverage. That doesn't take a single gram away from what Wagner built here over these 2 years. He gave identity to a defense that didn't have one. He was the Walter Payton Man of the Year, and if he ends up chasing Ray Lewis's record in a different jersey, it's going to sting, but the respect he earned in Ashburn doesn't leave with him, I hope. And this is pure fan wishing now. I hope that if he breaks that record, he breaks it wearing burgundy and gold. That's a story we'd be telling for generations. Alright, from a legacy story with a possible dignified send-off, we go to one with a completely different tone. This one gave me more of a laugh than anything else, because free agency can be the coldest, most unfair thing in sports. Last story of the day, and this one has me a little amused at how strange the free agent market has gotten. Remember when Washington brought DEEBO Samuel over from San Francisco last offseason? The idea being to pair him with McLaurin to build one of the most dangerous duos in the conference. The plan made sense on paper. What wasn't in the plan was McLaurin missing a huge chunk of the season with injury, leaving Samuel carrying way more offensive weight than he was ever designed to carry alone. Even so, the man answered the call. 16 games played, 72 catches, 727 yards, 5 touchdowns. Not superstar numbers, but the numbers of a reliable receiver who did his job in a tough year for the whole offense. And yet, Washington decided not to bring him back. They let him hit the open market, and here's the part that's almost funny if it weren't somebody's actual career we're talking about. Nobody's calling him. Mike Florio, on his PFT PM podcast, said it with a bluntness that made me laugh out loud. He said, and I'm going to give you the gist rather than his exact words, that DEEBO's situation is a confusing one because he hasn't heard a single team mentioned as interested. And then he dropped the line that sums up the whole problem. DEEBO needs to accept that he's about to make a lot less money to do the exact same thing he's always done. That's the whole issue right there. DEEBO still thinks he's the 2021 version of himself, the guy breaking tackles like he was playing on easy difficulty. The league doesn't see him that way anymore. The league sees a useful physical role player, not an early July priority signing. What's interesting is there are names floating around, they just haven't turned into formal offers yet. Kansas City keeps getting mentioned, looking to reinforce Patrick Mahomes' receiver room, and the spot rack number I found is worth noting. Samuel has $82.4 million in career earnings, and his estimated market value heading into this free agency was $15.8 million a year. That gap, compared to what the actual market is offering right now, which so far is literally 0 confirmed calls, shows the full distance between what DEEBO believes he's worth and what 32 front offices are willing to pay. Indianapolis has also come up in conversations, though the receiver roster competition there is already tough with Alec Pierce and lingering questions around Tyreek Hill and his knee rehab. Now, what does this mean for us as Commanders fans? Honestly, not much directly, because the decision's already made and the team seems comfortable moving forward without him. The depth chart behind McLaurin right now has Luke McCaffrey at number 2 and Antonio Williams at number 3, and that's exactly where the Keishan Boutte conversation we just had comes back in. If Washington closes that trade, DEEBO's absence on the roster stings a lot less because fresh blood arrives with a completely different profile, younger, more vertical, and cheaper against the cap. DEEBO, with all the respect and all the gratitude for what he gave in a hard year, becomes a footnote in this position's rebuild, not the main chapter. And here's my little joke for the day. Because I earned it if in 4 weeks DEEBO ends up signing with the Chiefs for a fraction of what he was making here, and then goes and scores a touchdown against Washington in the regular season, I already know exactly how that Twitter timeline is going to feel that night. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, but if it does, at least we saw it coming back in July. And that's it for today's show, fam. 3 stories, 3 completely different emotions. A possible cheap addition with an LSU heart that could solve a real problem in our offense. A living legend sitting 59 tackles away from rewriting the record books, and right now we don't even know if he's going to do it wearing burgundy and gold or a different color entirely. And a former commander of the market is treating with a coldness that honestly surprised even me. This is what I love about following this team season after season. There's never a boring day. Listen, never. Every July brings a new layer of drama before a single snap gets played in preseason. Personally, I'm sitting here waiting on that BOUTTE signing with the same nervous energy I get waiting for the first day of training camp. And I'm going to keep tracking every update on Wagner, because however that story resolves, it's going to be part of how we remember this era of the franchise. Tell me down in the comments, would you make the BOUTTE trade right now for a 5th round pick? And do you think Wagner should come back even in a reduced role? I want to read every single answer. That debate always gets good whenever we talk about these 3 situations. Drop a like if this breakdown helped you out. Subscribe if you haven't already, because this is just getting started with training camp right around the corner, and I'll see you in the next one. Hail to the Commanders always.